Hello, everyone, and welcome back to what I think you guys might also think is the most exciting episode thus far in season 2, because it is by far our most requested guest on the show. But more than that, and this is actually a little emotional for me, we actually record. Well, it is because we recorded with this guest out in Los Angeles on one of our last trips. We recorded with her shortly before the world stopped due to COVID. So first of all, it was just like, back in the time when I could be in a room with someone talking to them, which was in and of itself such a luxury that I did not even know how badly I would miss. But beyond that, we actually had scheduled for this guest because her footage, the audio and video footage, were corrupted after we filmed together, meaning that we couldn't use the footage. We had hyped up to our followers. We're like, oh, we're filming with this person that you guys so much want to see on the channel. JK, the footage was lost. But it was not to worry because at the time we were like, well, no big deal. We'll just bring you out here to New York. You want to come be in New York for a couple days anyway. It works out. We'll film it here in our in-house studio. That was scheduled for March 18th. And I'm sure those of you following at home probably are aware of what happened March 18th of last year, which is that basically the world shut down and there's been basically no travel since a full year later. So we are finally getting to re-record this episode, and I'm sure it'll be a little bit different with all these new considerations. She's doing different stuff in her life. We're doing different stuff in ours. But we finally will get to be sort of together. We are over Zoom. I'm here in studio. She's out in Los Angeles. And then maybe, just maybe later this year, Moderna willing, we will get to be in the same room once more and maybe do something like this in person for you guys. But we'll see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. In the meantime, both our most requested guest and the guest who had the most Mr. Bean-like series of errors getting the video filmed, Asia Dang.
Yay!
Oh my God.
I was thinking about when we first did this, and was it in February or was it?
It was in
January?
February. It was in February.
That is so crazy. That is so, it's crazy how different a year, it was just a year ago and the world is completely different now.
It's completely different. And it's honestly it's not until I think, I don't know, do you feel the same? But I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel like the year anniversary of this shit is killing me. Like the fact that it's a year, it's too much.
It's crazy. It's I didn't normally have a problem with this because I just like to stay home. I normally say no to events or to see people anyway. So it wasn't a drastic life change for me. But now that we're at a year of being forced to stay home and not having the option of staying home, I'm just okay, I just need to get out of here. I'm getting antsy, but we just gotta wait till, I guess we all got shots and are responsible and respect other people's health, I guess. But yeah, it's a lot.
Well, as a member of the most oppressed and maligned class of people on the internet, which is to say extroverts, I feel especially affected by this because unlike everyone else on the internet who always talks about how they say no to everything and stay home and eat pizza, which I fully believe, I'm sure that you guys do that. I love to say yes to things. I love to go out. I love to see people. I love to have parties. I'm so upset.
Seems like you're living your best life just cooking at home, though.
All
this delicious stuff at home.
Well, thank you. But that really does go to show how much of a false image Instagram is. Because although the pictures do look good, I must say that the difference between how much I enjoy cooking for myself alone and how much I enjoy cooking for even just my husband, who I haven't been with most of this year, night and day. It's so hard to motivate myself to do.
For sure. Totally.
So for those of you, we just could not avoid the COVID conversation because it just looms large over every human interaction these days. But for those of you at home who are wondering about who Asia is and why she is so relevant to TFD if you don't know, so Asia kind of made her mark on the internet, I guess one could say, by paying off $200,000 of debt in 23 months. We're going to talk a lot about that and that experience. But since then, she's kind of leaned into the personal finance space online. She recently started a company of planners called Master Plan, which helps you organize your finances in your life, and just has sort of really taken an interest in financial education and communication generally. But obviously for most of our audience listening, they're going to be first and foremost curious about your debt repayment journey. So can you take us just through that process, where you started, why you started, and how you were able to accomplish such an amazing feat in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the why is probably the most important part of that. Because up until then, I had just ignored my debt completely, like not even paying minimums. I was just like ignoring it. But one day, my dog Luke, who's my second youngest dog, he got really sick and we didn't know like what was going on with him. And we went to a vet and he needed to have emergency surgery. And I couldn't afford it. And I was just at the vet, just sitting there watching families having to take out debt at the vet's office to afford care for their animal, or having to watch families, which is like the most traumatic thing in the world, having to put down their pets because they couldn't afford the surgery they needed. And it was at that moment where I was like, okay, I've totally messed up my life. This is completely irresponsible for, I think that time I was like 30, for a 30-year-old woman to not be able to afford care for a member of my family that I chose to have. We got to fix this. So fortunately, my boyfriend was able to pay for Luke's surgery. He's alive and well, sleeping on the couch right now. But that was kind of the why I started my entire journey. And yeah, that kind of propelled me to be very, very, very aggressive. When I first started my journey, I wasn't making the kind of money that I'm making now. So I think when I first started, I was making about $50,000 a year, and now I'm making six figures. So um, me, I think sharing my journey online has not only been um, really good for me financially, obviously, but just personally, because I always say that I don't think it would have been possible for me to pay off my debt as quickly and aggressively as I did, if I didn't have like this YouTube community to um, help push me and to motivate me and to keep me responsible for what I wanted to do. So that was kind of how that whole thing started.
And how did you, was your initial debt mostly student debt?
Yeah, so it was $180,000 of student loan debt. That was a mix between undergrad and graduate. And then I had a small car loan and a small credit card, but the majority of that was student loans.
When you were initially just not paying it, been there, have also done the same with a much lower number, but nonetheless can relate to that. What was your mindset about it? Like, were you just like, screw it, like it's so much debt, I'll never get out of it? Or did you like resent it? Like, how did you feel about the debt that was leading you to just not even deal with it?
I 100% thought that I would have debt for the rest of my life.
Mm.
Like, I really thought that I would always struggle with money. I always thought that I would have some kind of debt. The idea that I'd be sitting here with you talking about how I'm debt free just never even occurred to me. And at that point, I just like couldn't even afford to pay student loan debt, rent, and health insurance at the same time. So I kind of just chose two of the more important ones, which for me is like a roof over my head and health, over paying student loan debt. So, you know, it was just, I wouldn't say better to ignore it because I had major anxiety. My anxiety manifests in me not being able to sleep. And I had many, many sleepless nights. So, you know, I guess I always thought I would have anxiety for the rest of my life because I did not know how I was going to pay my student loan debt at the time.
I was very much kind of in an eerily similar situation. I was in debt, pretty much all consumer debt, credit cards. But I was similarly like, I'll just always be in debt. Like, this will always just be how I relate to money. I similarly suffer from anxiety that manifests in insomnia. And similarly to you, like, I was just like, especially because I was living in Europe and working on East Coast hours, like, it just lent itself to me getting to bed at like 4 a.m. every night. Like, I was just living in such an upside down way. And I feel like there's almost a point when you're overwhelmed with a financial situation, especially something like debt, where you almost like integrate it into your personality. You're like, well, that's just who I am. Like, I'm just terrible with money. And like, I'm just always I'm good at other things, but I'm not good at money.
I mean, that's what people say all the time. Like, oh, you'll always have debt. You
Right.
know, that like that's not actually a normal thing. Like owing people money is not a normal thing. So like it's good to normalize that and the fact that we're talking about it, but normalizing the fact of like having debt is just really not a healthy thing. Just especially like emotionally and physically and mentally is not healthy.
Totally. And I mean, there's obviously some forms of debt that I think can be, healthy and productive. Like most people will need to take out a loan to buy a house, for example.
100%. Yeah.
But I do think there's a tendency with, I think especially the student loan crisis has really caused this blurring between what is good and bad debt, because it really not only exists in that kind of in-between space where, like, on the one hand, yes, you are investing in your education, which statistically will probably make you a higher earner over your lifetime, although for many people it doesn't necessarily work out the way they thought it would work out. But at the same time, like, many people didn't even finish their degree, or they didn't need to go to the school they needed to go to. So like that kind of debt is very gray area in terms of the utility of the debt. And it's also so pervasive, and for so many people, such a high number, that I feel like because of most people's relationship with that debt specifically, it sort of blurs together the whole concept of debt. And that's when you start to be like, oh, well, what's, a credit card here or a car note that's too much there. It all becomes one big pile because you're no longer distinguishing between the value you're getting out of the debt.
100%. That's like a great way of putting that. And as you kind of take out more debt, you don't really learn how to pay it off. And when you finally like want to tackle it, it's just at such a huge number that it's just easier to ignore it, like we both did.
Totally. And so when you first started paying off your debt, what was your approach? Like, especially when you were at that lower income, how did you start managing it logistically?
Also, isn't it crazy that we're saying that $50,000 a year is a low income?
Well,
Like
it's lower
that's
than what
so
you're making
crazy.
now, and to pay off 200,000 in such a short time. But
I
yes,
mean,
good
but
point.
even in LA, like I was thinking about it, like how did I even live off of that? And I'm not even that big of a spender, but even that was a struggle to live in LA on that kind of income is
Yeah.
crazy. Um, but yeah, my actually, as I was driving down to the vet with my dog, I was talking to my girlfriend Jen, and she recommended Dave Ramsey. And now it kind of makes me uncomfortable to talk about Dave Ramsey. But at the time, that was kind of my only intro into someone who might have had a solution for my
Mm-hmm.
problem. And I read his book, The Total Money Makeover, and it kind of just made sense to me. I mean, there were some of his baby steps that I tweaked along the way, and some of his teachings that I didn't fully follow. But baby step one of a mini emergency fund, I saved that up. Baby step two of paying off your debt from smallest to largest, I did that. And that took me 2 years. And that was kind of the only, I would say, teaching that actually like took hold of me and I understood and I could grasp for some reason. And after I read his book, I kind of just like literally that night I paid off my credit card, and it was just
Yeah.
like there from there on, it was just following those baby steps.
Totally. Well, first and foremost, there's something to be said for extremes, right? A lot of people really latch on to the feeling of being very black or white and binary in the early days of their thinking because they need to be, because it's such an extreme situation. So I definitely understand how the baby step method can be very useful. Also, I don't think it's like, obviously, our audience knows, like, Mr. Ramsey, like, we're not going to get into it, but a problematic fave to say the least. That being said, I think you can take things from all kinds of problematic sources. I mean, like, I love a lot of Army Hammer movies, and he's like literally allegedly a cannibal. So I don't know if I can like really be throwing stones here. But suffice to say, like, it doesn't really matter where you're getting what works for you. You really just sort of have to, and especially I think when it comes to how you're managing your finances, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to take a little bit from here and a little bit from there, and whatever works for you, just lean into it and don't overthink it, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you kind of have to lean into something and then go with the flow with what works for you. Because for me, I liked how very like clear cut and black and white Dave Ramsey was, but also I need a little like leeway to have fun. There was no way I could live off of rice and beans and rice, like he says, because I don't know, I like to treat myself on occasion. I like to get monthly facials and I like to go out and eat sushi. And I found out really quickly that if I took those things out that gave me joy out of my life until I paid off debt, I would have given up. Like, you have to be able to live your life responsibly while also paying off debt if you want um, this to last past, financial independence to last past paying off debt. Like, it has to be sustainable, and that's only thing that's that can only be determined while you pay off debt. Like, how are you able to sustain this throughout your payoff journey? Because for many people, it's going to be years and years and years to do that. So what's going to keep you for staying committed while doing probably the most difficult thing that you'll ever do, ever? And for me, it was kind of treating myself to things that Dave Ramsey probably would have yelled at me for.
Listen, that man yells about a lot of things. So,
Yeah.
you're in good company.
Yeah. He's kind of angry sometimes.
Yeah. So like, obviously, even though you did keep certain luxuries, and that was a huge part of you staying motivated over the course of 2 years to be so aggressive in your debt repayment, which is still, we should say, a really short time window, but it is still, especially, I mean, the trade-off for it being a short time window is that it was very aggressive. It was a lot of your disposable income. So, kind of aside from keeping those little luxuries, how did you manage to stay kind of enthusiastic and joyful on a day-to-day basis with such a scaled down lifestyle? And kind of more importantly, how did you decide, especially in the initial days, like what to keep in your budget, what to get rid of, and how did you find that motivation, like when you would get unexpected income or extra money or side gigs or whatever, to be really aggressive about putting it toward debt?
Totally. So, two things. One is, I think, just who I am. I'm not really a big spender on things that I don't really find important, like clothes. I don't really spend a lot of clothes. I wear my boyfriend's clothes. He's looking at me right now. I wear my boyfriend's clothes because I just don't like to spend money on stuff like that. But things that were important to me were things that, or like, I don't like getting my nails done. So that's not a big deal to me, but facials are something that I needed. I mean, I haven't gotten a facial in a year because where we are, or my lash extensions were important to me too. So those were things that I kept in my budget at a sacrifice for maybe going out to dinner or going out with my girlfriends or going on a trip. So those are things that were non-negotiables to me. And very early on, when I first started building my budget, the comment section would be like, you need to take out your facials, you need to take out your eyelash extensions. Those aren't necessary. All your extra money needs to go out debt. And I'm just like, that's just not something I'm willing to sacrifice. But I am willing to sacrifice other things in order to keep those necessities in my budget. So I knew pretty quickly that what I wanted to keep and what I didn't. In terms of how to keep motivated, is I'm a very visual person. So what I did was I actually built these charts. I call them my debt flow charts. So anytime I pay off a debt, I would actually like highlight it. So it's kind of like a video game, right? And I would just see all my highlighted numbers, and that kept me motivated because I'm not someone that just like throws money and is like, yay, that's exciting. I need like a visual representation of that. And that's where my debt flow charts came in very handy. And when I wanted to go on a trip or when I wanted to treat myself to a really fancy dinner, I would kind of save up for it. And I used that same method of my debt flow chart for kind of my sinking fund. So every time I added money to like a really nice restaurant, I would highlight that in my book. So I'd be one step closer to treating myself to something, or one step closer to paying off my debt. So I found that was kind of like a crucial way of me sustaining the amount of debt that I was paying off.
I feel like it's so important to show yourself what you're getting in exchange for saying no to something, because I feel like it's incredibly hard to like, because the idea of like, oh, okay, I can spend $50 going out for a meal with my friend, or I can put $50 toward this massive number. Like, unless you really take the time to visualize for yourself and see the trade-off, it's almost impossible to feel motivated to make that longer term sacrifice. And I feel like it also helps to really visualize and take time to think out like what that would represent in compound interest. You know, if that, additional $50 were to stay on your debt for another several years, like what would that turn into? Because by nature, our brains are primed to prefer instant gratification and to prefer what's tangible and to have a really hard time to think in the future and think long term, and especially to, sort of naturally be able to understand things like compound interest. So I feel like really that visual component, even for someone who's not a distinctly visual learner, is very important. I have a question though that is a bit of a digression, but I think a lot of people who are fans of yours would want to know, and I want to know as a person who sees your Instagram. You surprised me by saying that you don't spend a lot of money on clothes because you're always so fashionable on your Instagram, and you always look like, to me, you're like one of those cool Instagram girls. And I'm like, look at Asia just like in her cool new outfit looking cool. So
Really?
oh my girl, what? Okay, I'm sorry for the people watching the video. Maybe Emily can put up some photos from your Instagram because you are always looking so fashionable. What's your secret?
I don't think anyone has ever called me fashionable ever. Look, right now I'm wearing sweatpants and dirty socks and a sweater I got from ThreadUp. It was like $9.
Wow. I feel like I'm being gaslit right now. You have the coolest Instagram. What? No, but so in all seriousness, what is your method for clothes shopping? Because clearly you do buy some clothes.
So, well, when I was in debt, I honestly really didn't. I'm really serious when I say I live in my boyfriend's clothes. He's the fashionable one. So anything that's like designer or cool looking is probably his. But now that I do have extra money to spend on clothes, I make sure that I spend a little extra money on clothes that are timeless and classic and sustainable and good quality. Like I don't shop at Zara or Forever 21, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you need to do. But for me, I spend a little extra money to make sure that I get things that are of quality and that will last me forever, because I just hate shopping. So if I can buy one thing that'll last me for the rest of my life, I will do that.
It's really depressing when you realize that, like, yes, the fast fashion shops have terrible practices, but so do a lot of the expensive shops. That's the real sad thing to realize, because you have to really be on, like, you have to read shit.
It's a bummer. It's like we as consumers need to put it upon ourselves to really like dig in to see if what they say that they're providing is actually what they do. So I try to just shop locally and female-owned businesses personally.
I love that. Yeah, I do not have quite so high standards, but I will say my whole adult life, like all my 20s growing up, I was like, I'll know that I'm successful when I can shop at Club Monaco. And
Yes.
I shop a good amount at Club Monaco now. Like I'm like slowly like integrating it more and more into my wardrobe. Like this skirt is Club Monaco. Actually, this sweater might be. Anyway, I like buy more and more of it. And I'm like so happy that that's my life now, that I'm like, if they have bad practices, nobody tell me, because I don't want to know.
Right.
I don't want someone to like derail me after I've come this far. But anyway, so when it comes to the like post-debt life, because I feel like a lot of people are so curious about that experience, especially if that's something they're really working toward. Tell me about what it felt like the moment that you became debt free. Like, what was that emotional experience for you? And how has your life changed and your approach to money changed post debt payoff?
Um, I mentioned this in one of my videos, is I feel like I kind of had some post-traumatic debt stress after I paid off my debt, because the moment I did it, like it's in one of my videos, I just broke down because I could not believe that I accomplished something that I thought it was impossible. And then just like the weight off of my shoulders of not having any debt at all was, unexplainable. Like I cannot explain that feeling to anyone, because it's just something that you have to experience. It was just like to say I felt 50 pounds lighter would have been an understatement. It was an amazing experience. But after that, it's like I always, maybe for like a month or two after I paid off debt, I still had the thought that I was in debt. Like I was still very much worried that I missed some payment of a payment that didn't exist anymore. And I had that anxiety for a little bit. That anxiety came back of me worrying that I missed a payment or I had some kind of debt that I didn't have. And it was very weird. Like no one really talks about that after you pay off debt. But when you commit yourself so aggressively and spend so much time, um, one, believing that you'll always be in debt, and then two, actually like paying off debt, that feeling of being in debt doesn't just disappear, you know? So that was something that I did not expect, to feel anxiety over not having debt. That's so weird. Um, but as of now, my spending habits have not changed at all. And the only difference is, instead of throwing a bunch of money towards my debt, is I'm throwing a bunch of money towards saving up for a down payment for a home. So my lifestyle hasn't changed at all. My spending habits haven't changed at all. The only difference is now I'm putting a lot of money towards a down payment and money towards a retirement. So I'm not like splurging on anything.
Interesting. So you currently rent your place?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep. Currently rent. And then the goal is to save up 200,000 actually, by the end of the year, or close to that.
Wow, getting that $1 million house, are we?
No, we actually might be moving to Texas to buy something more manageable.
Okay, so just like a really substantial down payment. So you have a small
Yeah.
mortgage. That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. Where in Texas?
Probably Houston, because that's where my boyfriend's family is.
Oh, nice. So I guess that is a good thing to maybe plan for if you are um, in the process of paying off a large debt, which obviously forces so much structure on you and forces you to have a very clearly defined path financially. Like, have some other goals lined up for right when you know, get debt free, because then you're not going to just like suddenly slip into all these bad habits or feel like you can do whatever with your money.
Mm-hmm, totally. I do feel though, like really, if you spend all that time, being financially motivated to pay off debt, that you don't very quickly like regress. I feel like it really is a lifestyle change.
Mm.
And that is the thing that I am most grateful for, is that my relationship with money throughout this whole process has completely changed. And I don't foresee myself kind of regressing in any way. I mean, we'll see. Maybe in like 10 years, I'll like something will happen and that'll be crazy. But I think it's really hard to commit all this time and all this work and all this money to a financial goal, and then regress into your old ways. It's very much a habit that'll stick with you, being financially healthy, I guess.
This is so a slightly different topic, but one that I'm really curious about for you, because you obviously, through sharing your debt journey, you've become an influencer. You've become a creator, as we say, and are very sort of front and center to your brand, and people really look to you in that way. And I'm curious how you feel about that emotionally, like how you've navigated it, and especially as it comes to, you know, you're at an interesting nexus of, which I can relate to in a lot of ways, of advocating a financially conscientious lifestyle and a budget friendly lifestyle while being a very high earner and someone who does have a lot of disposable income and who is saving up $200,000 by the end of the year. So I guess the two-part question is, like, first of all, how are you sort of emotionally navigating, you know, being this influencer and having this public presence, and what kind of pressures that puts on you? But then also how you navigate the balance of, you know, speaking to a very budget conscious audience while maybe not being in the same place.
Totally. I mean, I was actually a creator before I shared my debt-free journey. Me becoming, this financial influencer. That was never that was never a part of the plan. I was on YouTube for a couple years before I shared my journey. And I think the reason why I was able to share, something so personal is that I really just don't give a shit about what people think about me. So I wasn't really embarrassed about sharing my journey, and the mean comments that I got about how I was like a stupid bitch and deserved being in debt didn't really bother me. And the only reason why I continued to share my journey is because the majority of the comments were like, wow, for the first time in my life, someone actually is talking about this and I can relate to this person and we're going through the same thing. So that's really the only reason why I continued this, was because I saw that there was a need for a community for a debt-free, journey and becoming, a debt-free lifestyle. But yeah, I mean, my life has completely changed from when I started to where I am now. And it really does make me wonder, because every single month since December 2017, I've posted my monthly budget videos. And I used to use real numbers, now I'll use percentages. But now I feel like my income is getting to a point where it's not remotely relatable. And I do have that concern. And even in the comment section, sometimes it's like, Asia's rich now. Like, I don't know why I'm still watching this, yada, yada. But the majority of the comments are like, now this is like aspirational. This is something that, as a woman of color, being such a high income earner, this is something that I want to see. So I think it's just me kind of just being honest of where I am at financially, which I've always done, but also honest about, I still don't know really what I'm doing. I'm now in this whole phase of saving up for retirement, which I've never done. And people are asking me questions about retirement. I'm like, dude, I don't know anything. I'm paying someone to do this for me, but I'll let you know once I figure out all the answers for you. But right now I don't have them. So it's just me kind of continuously just being honest about where I am at mentally and financially. And that's really all I can do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting. Like being the owner of TFD, it's sort of like diametrically opposed with the idea of staying at a low income, because like by nature, if TFD succeeds, like I'm succeeding. Definitely there's no like gains in representation there, because being a wealthy white woman, like we've clearly seen plenty of that in the media. So like that's not even like really probably a new aspirational thing. But I will say that I think that the thing about women versus men having money or spending money, or sort of even just being visibly financially comfortable, is that I think we treat women having money very differently than we treat men having money. And like, listen, I'm as progressive as they come politically. Like, I think all rich people should be less rich for sure. And like, there should be, a way lower sort of discrepancy between the wealthy and the poor in this country. However, I do notice that like a man who is successful at what he does, who has earned a strong income, who has disposable income, like I feel like we are less bothered by that. I feel like we're way less scrutinizing like what he spends his money on. Like in the personal finance YouTube world, for example, like there are just so many videos ripping apart women's spending decisions and like ripping apart their budgets. And like people would tell you that like, oh, getting a facial every month is such a waste. Whereas like, would they tell a man that like getting his, going to the barber is a waste of money? Like, or, if a man chooses to spend money on a watch, like that's acceptable, but a woman buying, a necklace is not acceptable, or what have you. So I do think there is that issue of feeling like you have to be very conscientious about the way in which you spend money and what like purchases are and aren't deemed acceptable. But as far as kind of taking it to the next level, like you say, like I'm not, an expert on things like retirement, et cetera. Like, do you have an aspiration to become more of a voice and of an educator on some of these topics that go a little further in the financial space?
I really want to go back to what you said, because the one thing that I've learned throughout, like the one thing that has been just so jarring for me is that people are really uncomfortable when women have their financial shit together. It is really, really interesting to see. And I think that's why people like you and me are so important, because we're normalizing women not only being financially independent, but also, high income earners. And we're not afraid to talk about it. We're not ashamed of it. And it's just like mind boggling to me how many, especially men, how many men are uncomfortable when women don't need to rely on them for money. And I see it all the time in my comment section. And it is crazy to me.
I totally agree. I'm sure your comment section is similarly female to the TFD comment section, where I think it's 82% women on YouTube on our channel. But that, 18% or whatever of men, they are quite vocal. They want to make themselves heard. And they are always the ones, usually, who will have, really maybe not nice things to say about, how a woman, how much she earns, the money she chooses to spend. We also have a lot of other women's stories on TFD where women will be very candid about their spending habits and things like that. And I think a lot of men, like you said, I think are very uncomfortable with the idea that a woman doesn't rely on them, that she doesn't need them. But I think B, so much of now this, we're really getting to toxic masculinity here, but I really want to go there. So like, so much of what we teach men about like their utility in the world, what they're supposed to be, who they're supposed to aspire to be, their role in life and in a relationship, like, is so centered around finances and them earning more and them being in control. They pay for the date. They buy the engagement ring. They, surprise her with like a Lexus with a bow on it. Like, it's just so centered around that idea of you are providing money. And I think that is something that we don't confront enough, because I do think it's also very tied into our consumer spending problem as a society. Because like, if you're not able to like buy your family the nice car and upgrade to the nicer house and do all of these things that are very financially centric, a lot of men are probably wondering like, well, what else am I supposed to be bringing to the table?
Totally. I mean, well, first of all, I think you'd find it interesting that my audience is very much split 50-50 men and female, because when I first started, I was actually a Maxim model. So I had 100% male following. And that has like slowly creeped up. We're like at half. I have, I think, like 52% female following right now. So we're getting there, but I still have a heavy male following, and the majority of them are very supportive. I think also because their girlfriends are like, get your shit together because you're following Asia, and we're all about, female empowerment and financial independence. So figure it out. But yeah, I still have those comments, and they're just like blocked at this point. I just don't have the patience, and I don't want the people who are in my community to read that and think it's acceptable, whatever bullshit comment they leave. So that's probably actually why we're creeping up on the female balance, because I'm just like blocking assholes left and right now. It's just no shame.
I'm sorry. Wait, you were a Maxim model?
Yeah, yeah,
Wait,
that's how I started. I was in the Maxim magazine. I had my own show on Maxim called Maxim Sports One-on-One. I interviewed Shaquille O'Neal, Danica Patrick. I emailed all these athletes, and they talked to me and taught me how to play their sport. It's a whole thing, girl. Yeah, there's like bikini pictures of me everywhere.
Wow. This is how like suburban mom I am in my taste. When you said a Maxim model, I heard the letters MAXA, and I was like a Maxinista, like a DJ Maxx model.
But yeah,
Wow.
it's actually kind of crazy what my journey is. It's all kind of weird.
That is really interesting.
I say this all the time, is like female financial independence is the ultimate form of female empowerment. And I think I came up in a really unique position in which my parents were divorced. So I saw my mom doing everything my dad would traditionally do, and I saw my dad doing everything my mom would traditionally do. So I didn't really have, I didn't think that such toxic masculinity existed. until I came on the internet. It's a really weird place. And even now, my boyfriend, we've been dating for 7 years and we live together. But as of right now, because he's a choreographer that makes his living off of traveling internationally, which he can't do anymore, now I am, the high income earner in the relationship. And it took a little for him to get used to, because when we first started dating, I was making zero money. Like
Mm.
I was probably making $30,000 a year, and he helped me many of times to pay off, rent when I couldn't afford it. So it's been a really interesting dynamic shift in our relationship. And fortunately, you know, it's not something that he's embarrassed about. And I think he enjoys it, quite frankly, sometimes, that I'm kind of like this boss ass bitch in, work and in the relationship.
Yeah.
But it is really, really interesting to see how a powerful, financially independent woman scares certain type of men.
Totally. Totally. Out of curiosity, are your finances very combined or very separate or kind of a mix with your boyfriend?
No, they're 100% separate.
Yeah, no, I'm very similar with my husband and we're married. So I definitely can relate to that.
I mean, I think you just need to find out what works best for you. Brian is very new to kind of tracking his finances, and um, he doesn't have any debt just because he didn't really go to school, and he doesn't have any credit card debt or anything, but he's still very new to this whole. I think he feels the pressure of being my boyfriend, that he needs to have his financial life together. So I'm just going to let him, take care of his finances until we can both be at a place where we can combine it. But I don't think that you have to subscribe to the fact that you're in a relationship with someone and or married and you need to mix finances. Like, I don't know. I guess we'll see once we get married. But as of right now, our finances are mixed or aren't mixed. They're very much separate, and that works best for us.
Mm. So now that you're on this like totally different part of your financial journey, and you are past the debt payoff, you know what your next goals and steps are. So you started this company to create planners for other, I guess, mostly women, but probably, listen, men can join in too, I'm sure, to sort of reshape their relationship around money and life choices and mindfulness and things like that. Tell me a little bit more about why you did that, what your plan is for it, and what it's been like running a business with actual physical inventory, which is extremely intimidating to me.
It is probably the worst experience of my life. It has been so difficult.
I felt the pain in
am
that.
I am having such a hard time.
Oh my God.
Anyone who follows my Instagram knows that it has been such a struggle. But we'll come back to that. But basically, I launched a company called Master Plan in January. And it was honestly for selfish reasons. Like, I love a planner. I live my life on a planner, but there hasn't been a planner in which I could do everything in. I've always had to have at least 2 or 3 planners or journals in my life to document or write down everything that I needed. So I just built myself my perfect planner. And it is a weekly planner that is heavily focused on finances. So we have a debt overview page, we have a weekly expense tracker, we have a monthly budget tracker, all within kind of this planner that you would normally see every day. It's just a great opportunity to kind of take hold of your finances. And even I use my planner very aggressively, and I'm not in debt, but this is for anyone who just wants to be more financially responsible with their life. But let me tell you, girl, I did not know what I was getting myself into when I thought that this was a good idea. And it has been so difficult running a small business, especially by myself. Like, I'm the one that does everything: customer service, social media. I built the planner. The design is mine. it, especially in the time of COVID, it's been such a struggle. It's so hard.
Yeah, it's like on our short list for 2021 of things to do to get into a few physical products. And we'd like to self-publish for a second book, and do a couple things that are like in the bookish space. But running the numbers on it from a logistics point of view, like the cost of printing, the cost of shipping, the like actual back and forth, like it is really difficult to figure out a situation in which it's at all financially viable and doesn't require us to charge like $100 for a book.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I tried really, really hard to keep my planner in the US.
Mm-hmm.
But it is so expensive because I want the quality of something that is very luxe, but I also know that the majority of people buying my planner um, are probably still working on their debt, and I don't want to charge them like a stupid amount of money for a planner. So the best option I have found is in China, and that's where my paper manufacturer is. Um, the feedback I've gotten from the planner is very positive. The quality is amazing. The price point is only $30 for everything you get into it. But I had to go to China in order to get the quality and the price that I wanted, because here in the US was just impossible. Canada was even more expensive. And then also what I found was, as I was doing research, the people in America get their stuff from China anyways. So just cut out the middleman and just go straight there. And
Drama.
hopefully one day we'll be able to move production back stateside. But as a new company, it's just, like you said, not financially feasible at this point to
Yeah,
stay local.
totally. Totally. There's much to consider on that front. So, before I let you go, although you've technically answered these questions before, no one has gotten to hear them. So I'm going to ask you once more our rapid fire questions.
Oh no, I hate these. Okay.
Oh my God, no. Well, you don't have to.
No, do it. Come on.
All right. All right. Number one, what is the big financial secret of your industry? And can I make it really interesting by asking you to answer this on the modeling industry?
The big financial secret in the modeling industry is that you just don't really make that much money.
What did you make as a Maxim model?
uh, Girl, this was like 10 years ago. I don't remember. Let's just say not enough money to where I didn't have to sell things to pay rent.
Wow. That's not a lot of money indeed. Although I guess, I don't know, I feel like so much of the modeling industry is kind of built around like you also are like being paid, like you like go to things for free and people send you free things. And that's my perception of it anyway.
Well, also, this was, like I said, I haven't been in the modeling industry in a really long time. So it could very much change. Like, I know women who make a lot of money modeling, but I'm not that type of body type to do the kind of modeling that they did.
What does that mean?
So all the pictures, when you go on a website, all the models that you see and all the different clothes, they can make a lot of money, but you have to be very much a sample size, which is a size probably 0, and you have to be very tall and lengthy and gorgeous. And I'm not tall and I am not a size 0. But if you are a sample model for websites, you can make a lot of money.
Got it. And if anyone who's taking those photographs of women wearing the clothes on clothing websites is listening to this, please stop photographing the models like in these extremely awkward hunched over positions, or like kicking or like jumping or hula hooping. Like, just let them stand there so I can see what the clothes look like. Sick of that.
I just want to see the clothes.
I know. I'm like, why are we
so
watching
creative?
They're like in a marathon. I'm like, just slow down. I want to see the clothes. Okay. What do you invest in versus what are you cheap about?
What am I cheap about? That's interesting. I'm actually not cheap about anything anymore. Anytime I make the conscious effort to buy anything, it is an investment to me.
Ooh, I like that.
I'm trying to look around. Give me an example. What are you cheap about?
So much. I'm cheap about jewelry. I like, except for like my wedding and engagement ring, I only buy costume jewelry because I have lost so many nice things in my life. I'm never taking that risk again.
That's
Um,
fair.
I'm cheap about. That's a good question, actually. What am I? What am I cheap about? Do you know?
So for your jewelry example, I just don't wear jewelry too much, so I don't buy it. And if I do have jewelry, like we were talking about our earrings earlier, the this was definitely gifted. So I don't spend money on jewelry. I don't spend money on clothes. Like I said, this was $7 from a secondhand store. But yeah, I think now I just spend more money on things that'll last me forever so I never have to spend money on it again. I
Yeah,
just really
that's
hate spending money on things.
That's true. No, that's right. But I will say I'm definitely one of the things that it's not cheap necessarily, but I will run things into the ground. And like, although I definitely, like, I literally for an entire year and a half up until 2 months ago, I was using a broken hairbrush.
Oh my God. Oh, I know what I'm cheap about.
Yes.
I'm cheap about parking. I will spend 2 hours driving around the neighborhood for free parking. I will not spend a single dollar. I will not spend $1 to pay for parking. It's not going to happen.
That's
That's what I'm
admirable.
cheap about.
That's admirable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't driven in 10 years, so I don't know what
I
I
know,
would be
you're
like.
lucky.
I
It's
really don't know how I would
impossible
do it.
in LA. So let me tell you, the fact that I accomplish it every time is a feat.
Nice. And then, so obviously you do sort of invest in everything, but what's one thing that you like go really luxe on when you buy it?
Um, I would say my pampering experiences. I will spend some good money on like the best massage in LA.
Oh yeah, that's another thing I'm cheap about. Don't touch me. I don't want to be touched. I don't want to be like, I don't like any beauty, anything. I don't, oof, I hate it.
What?
It
So
grosses
you
me
don't get
out.
massages? Do you get your nails done or do you get facials?
I will occasionally get a facial, like if I have to for like a dermatological issue, but I hate the experience. Anytime I get my nails done, I really don't like getting my nails done. And when I do, I'm always like, no, thank you to the massage. And then like, there's also, I don't know, manicures, whatever, but like with pedicures, especially, I'm like, there's like a weird class dynamic. I'm like, I don't want someone touching my feet. Like, I feel, I wouldn't want to touch my feet. I don't know. The whole thing weirds me out. I don't want people touching me.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm totally there with the mani patties. Like I like they chip. I don't want to spend money on something that won't last me more than a
Right.
week. But like a good facial girl, I mean, luckily my esthetician is really affordable here in LA,
Mm.
but you need to get your monthly facials.
Listen, you have beautiful skin. I have rosacea. Like, I'm not wasting a lot of money trying to like
But
redo
that's why
this.
you need to get your monthly
But I go to the
facials.
dermatologist. Like, I go to a doctor. So like, I get it. No, I get it. And honestly, no, here's the real truth about it. I am cheap about all of that stuff, but that's all about to change because I'm 32 now. I'm fully starting with the more let's just say heavy duty structural face changes. Like I'm ready to start exploring the Botox filler world, lasers, chemical peels, that kind of stuff. I'm ready for
See,
it.
that's why I do my monthly facials because I'm really scared of getting Botox. Like, I'm just afraid that I will look like a different person. So that's why I'm very, very adamant on my monthly facials to keep the Botox at bay.
Well, listen, everyone's got their own thing. I also am like, I do a retinol regime. I do stuff. I just hate being touched. It's just weird to me.
Fair. I mean, that's fair.
Yeah. You should really get over that. Um, what has been your best investment and why?
I mean, my best investment has been in myself and paying off my debt because now I can do whatever the fuck I want.
That is that is a good investment. What has been your biggest money mistake and why?
Hmm. I think people would assume I would say going to spend a lot of money on college, but I don't view that as a mistake. It was just part of my journey. I've learned from it. What if I have kids, I won't kind of force a private school upon them like my parents did on me.
Mm.
So it's that has been a learning experience, and I wouldn't change that because I would probably wouldn't be here with you knowing what I know now. I think my biggest money mistake is, I guess, probably just not owning up to my shit earlier.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one. What is your biggest current money insecurity?
Girl, if I see another person on Instagram buying a goddamn house in LA, I'm going to freak out. I don't
What
know
is
how people
happening?
are doing it, but that is my biggest money insecurity right now, is just not being able to buy a house. It is crazy. I'm just like what money are you making to buy a house in Los Angeles? I need to know.
What do houses cost there?
Crazy. It is crazy. I'm struggling. It's a jealousy I'm struggling with right now. It is.
I'm so ignorant, but what does a house cost in LA? I live in New York, so my brain is poisoned.
Um, I mean, you can definitely get a variety of prices, but I would say the average that I am looking at is at least 850.
Mm,
And that's without that, and that is a house that needs updating. Like
mm.
you need a new kitchen at 850.
See, this is why you know it's deranged in New York because I'm like 850. That's a steal in Manhattan for like a shoebox apartment.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's why, I mean, my boyfriend and I are seriously considering moving to Houston. Not that I want to, because I do enjoy LA, but I'm viewing the move and buying a house there more as a long-term investment, because then I'll be able to pay off a house very quickly and then buy more real estate in places that I actually want to live in.
Nice. Not a bad strategy. What has been the financial habit that has helped you the most?
Budgeting.
Yeah.
For sure. Just actually, I look at my bank account now almost every day. And when before I started my journey, I would go months without acknowledging my bank account. So that's a habit that has totally changed my life.
Very much in the school of like when you swipe your debit card, it's just like close your eyes and pray.
Totally.
When did you first feel successful and what does that word mean to you?
I guess when my parents told me that they were proud of me. I
Oh.
come from a very Asian household where we don't share emotions.
Mm.
So having people say that to me was like, are we about to hug too? Like, what is this? This is weird. But yeah, that was a really cool moment. And also when my dad stopped asking me if I needed money.
Oh. Wait,
That was good.
that's so surprising that your upbringing was so unemotional because I feel like you're such a like warm person and your brand is so warm.
Yeah, no, I mean, my family is very warm and loving, but when it comes to I love yous, my popo doesn't slang that word out to everyone. My popo is my grandmother who's turning 92 in
Wow.
April. And my cousins and I joke that I don't think she said I love you to any one of us, and that's just how popo is. So that's just how it is. I mean, I always know that my family's there for me, and we are I did come up in a very much loving household, in the fact that when I needed someone, they were there. And I always had someone at every one of my games, every one of my performances, someone was always there. But I love you, man. That's an Asian unicorn. That
Well,
is
let
an
me
Asian
say,
unicorn.
both of my grandmothers, deceased and living, are slash were like that too. I don't think either of them have used that phrase. So that's just
Yeah.
that may
maybe
be.
maybe it's the generation. I don't
I
know.
was gonna say I think like once you live through like World War II, I just and like the Great Depression
Right.
and stuff, like that word is probably not, it doesn't come to mind
Yeah.
as often.
Totally.
So thank you so much. We may ask you to come back so the audience can ask you some questions too later in the season because you're just so highly requested and we have so many questions for you all the time. But in the meantime, when people want to get more of their Asia Dang Phil, where can they find you? Where are you living? Where are you making content?
Yes, you can find me on YouTube at Asia Dang, on Instagram at Asia Dang. Everything is at Asia Dang. And then if you want to check out the planner, it is Master Plan, MST RPLN. We had to be fancy with the names because people are swiping up domain names left and right, man. It is crazy out there. It's like the wild, wild west. But masterplan.co and then masterplan.co on IG as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure you will be around the TFD universe again soon. But in the meantime, have a great rest of your week. And to you guys at home, we will see you next Monday on another episode of the Financial Confessions. Bye, everyone.
Bye.